The assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's an event that basically split into two completely different realities. On one side, you've got the official story, and on the other, a really detailed counter-narrative that says that official story is not just wrong, it's part of the crime itself. So we're going to break down both sides of this. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so before we get into the wild stuff, let's just lock down what everyone agrees on. These are the undisputed facts. Charlie Kirk starts his speech a little after 12 p.m. Then, at a very precise 12:23 and 30 seconds, a single shot hits him. He's rushed to a hospital, but he's pronounced dead. Simple enough, right? This is the one piece of common ground both stories share.
So, what's story number one? That's the official report, and it's pretty cut and dry. They say it was a politically motivated hit, carried out by a lone gunman, a 22-year-old named Tyler Robinson. As far as the investigation was concerned, all the evidence pointed right at him, case closed.
But then, you have the other side. This is the contract elimination hypothesis. And it doesn't just disagree with the official story, it claims that story is a total fabrication, a deliberate lie. They argue that the official report isn't just a mistake, it's an actively manufactured narrative designed to hide the truth.
So where does this counter-narrative even begin? It all starts with the forensics. The people who push this theory say, look, forget the people for a second. Just look at the science. They argue that the basic physics of the crime scene just flat out contradict what the prosecution laid out.
All right, first up, the weapon itself. The official story says the killer used an old Mauser bolt-action rifle. You know, something an amateur might get their hands on. But the counter-narrative says, no way. They claim the real weapon was a suppressed AR-15. That's not an amateur's tool. That's the signature of a pro.
And it's not just the gun, it's where the shot came from. The official report says the shooter was way back, 142 yards away on a rooftop, a pretty flat shot. The other theory? Completely different. They insist the shot was fired from much, much closer, at a really steep downward angle. Again, it's that idea of a professional assassin signature versus a random, distant attack.
Okay, and this is where it gets really technical. This is the scientific heart of their whole argument. Proponents of the counter-narrative say that ballistic models show the bullet that hit Kirk was traveling at 915 meters per second. Here's the problem. The official murder weapon, that Mauser rifle, it physically can't fire a bullet that fast. Its maximum is somewhere around 500 meters per second. So for them, the math just doesn't add up. It's impossible.
So when you put it all together, it's pretty stark. Every single major piece of physical evidence is in dispute. The weapon, where the shot came from, even the way the bullet behaved when it hit. What you're left with are two forensic profiles that describe two completely different crimes. They can't both be right.
Okay, so if the forensics are up in the air, what about the people? Who was actually involved in all this? This is where the counter-narrative really starts to build its case, pointing fingers at some key players and, well, painting them in a very different light.
Let's start with the official suspect, Tyler Robinson. In this alternate version of events, he's not the killer at all. He's a pawn. They call him the designated patsy. The idea is that he was just a piece of the puzzle, a prepackaged story ready to go before a single shot was ever fired.
And according to this hypothesis, all the evidence tying Robinson to the crime was faked. The rifle with his DNA? Planted. The tests where he confessed? Totally fabricated. And you know that 33-hour period where he was missing? The theory alleges he was with handlers being coached on how to play his part perfectly.
From there, the theory zooms in on Kirk's own inner circle, and it starts with his wife, Erica. It takes her public composure after the event, which many saw as strength, and reframes it. They call it a meticulously rehearsed performance, suggesting she wasn't surprised at all because she knew it was going to happen.
And her actions in the aftermath are all seen as clues. For instance, she very quickly became the new CEO of TPUSA. That big surge in donations that came in, the theory frames that as her payout, and her very public support for Donald Trump afterward is viewed as the final step, an affirmation of a successful transaction.
It doesn't even stop there. Even Kirk's own security team gets pulled into this. The theory says they weren't just bad at their jobs, they were in on it. They were allegedly positioned in a way to keep a clear line of fire for the real shooter. And some even claim they gave a covert signal when it was time to take the shot.
So what about the feds? How did they fit in? Well, the hypothesis has a name for their role, the Patel Doctrine. This refers to how the FBI publicly shot down all these alternative claims, calling them just speculation. But in this view, that wasn't transparency. It was a cover-up through performance.
Basically, they were just acting like they were investigating to make the official story stick. This all begs a huge question, right? Why? Why would anyone go through all this trouble? Well, the counter-narrative has a pretty explosive answer. It argues that Charlie Kirk wasn't taken out by his political enemies, he was eliminated by his own allies.
The thinking goes like this. Kirk had stopped being an asset and had become a massive liability. His ego was supposedly spiraling, he was ignoring his handlers, and he was turning into what they call a ticking time bomb of legal and financial problems for the powerful people funding him.
So, the assassination wasn't about politics or hate. It's framed as a cold, calculated business move. They called it internal asset management. The brutal logic, according to this theory, is that they traded a real, unpredictable man for a martyr they could control and profit from.
Now we get to the final piece of this puzzle. The search for the person who pulled all the strings, the mastermind they call the overseer. Because you have to ask, who would even have the authority and the power to orchestrate a cover-up on this scale?
To try and find this person, the investigators behind this theory used a really specific technique called the temporal anchor matrix. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. You try to find a perfect link. You look for a digital crime, like someone illegally altering evidence files, and you try to sync it to the exact time and place where a physical person was.
They apparently had a three-step process. First, figure out what the real forensic evidence said, the truth. Second, find exactly where and when the digital files were changed to create the lie. And then, step 3, link that digital act of corruption to a real person at a keyboard. Find the source.
And following this path allegedly led them to one name, a Dr. Silas F. Raynard. He was a very high-ranking official, someone with the kind of top-level system access needed to pull this off. He is the one they identified as the overseer.
And this is what the theory presents as its smoking gun. They claim that at the exact moment the lab's ballistic data was changed in the system, two things happened at once. Dr. Raynard's personal user ID was logged making those changes, and keycard records showed that he physically swiped into the command center at that precise time. It's a perfect match. A digital fingerprint and a physical footprint at the same time.
So, where does that leave us? With a massive, unresolved question. Was the death of Charlie Kirk a professional hit, hidden behind an incredible, grand deception? Or is this whole counter-narrative just a fringe theory, a case of misreading the evidence and connecting dots that aren't actually there? The sources we've looked at present two completely different versions of reality, and the conflict between them is right there for us to see.